Welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a spin through the biggest stories in MMA. On this week's docket, more reactions to Ngannou's boxing debut. Cormier and Bisping, they're playing matchmaker. We'll cover that. And this weekend, we crown two more champions. Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Gorgeous George. And with me, as always, some of the sharpest MMA minds in the biz. Joining me this week goes from MMA Junkie Radio. Junkie Radio is available on all podcast platforms. He's also the creator of SBC. He's in Las Vegas. Dan Tom is back. MMA Junkie's fight analyst, always serves up the facts. For more on him, check out his podcast, Protect Your Neck. He's also in Sin City. And Danny Segura, he goes back-to-back weeks with us here on SBC. He's down in Miami. And if any of you MMA fans know someone that loves MMA and speaks Spanish, tell them about Hablemos MMA on YouTube. Cold coffee's on the ones and twos this week. Let's get started. Well, the reactions keep pouring in regarding Francis Ngannou's professional boxing debut versus Tyson Fury. Though he lost on the scorecards, Ngannou has had support thrown his way by many big names in combat sports. Here's a couple of examples. UFC president Dana White, he says, quote, "The fact that he went 10 rounds with Tyson Fury is crazy." PFL founder Don Davis, quote, "I think the opponents in pure MMA are not that interesting right now." Plus, he also says a few things about Deontay Wilder. And the UFC heavyweight champion, John Jones, he says, quote, "I thought he did great. I'm glad the fight was competitive, opened so many doors for everyone in the future." Panel, which reaction caught your attention the most and why? Goes, we lead off with you.
You know, it's funny when you really break it down. I think the question is almost like, whose message did you look at and go, was he hacked? And I think for me, it was Dana White, giving Francis Ngannou some props. I get it. He really didn't have a choice. You know, what Francis did was pretty amazing. Like, just the fight going off and him collecting the paycheck was pretty big for Francis Ngannou. And then I think people would say, hey, making it to the final bell would be a victory. That'd be a great result. But actually competing, getting a knockdown, a split decision, like, it's really, really hard to hate on that. And I get it. That's never stopped Dana before, right? But he did have his outs. You know, he could have just been full heel and gone the whole route of, well, you know how they do in boxing, or do you really think he got the best Tyson Fury? There's things he probably could have said, but saying he didn't watch the fight, I guess that's him maybe meeting us halfway and then saying that he was impressed that he went the distance and it was amazing. I think he met us in the middle there. That's not too bad, right? I think what really makes things interesting, though, from that comment, the way I read it, was, to me, that's almost like him maybe leaving the door open a little bit, right? He's one of the guys that always says, never say never. And I always feel like any opportunity he had to kind of poo-poo on this whole event, he'd take it. But this particular one, I thought was a decent comment. So it did catch me by surprise. And maybe there's a little hope for Francis Ngannou one day to come back.
Goes, do you think you watched the fight?
I think he did. Well, what else are you going to do, man? What else are you going to do?
Mm-hmm. Why do you think after 20 years, and he's the man, he's filthy rich, has a great promotion, awesome success story, he can't just go, yeah, I saw the fight, and then say what he had to say? Why do you think he has to kind of leave that opening of, you know, or just a little shade, I guess? I don't know. Like,
I don't know, man. Like, I think it just probably comes down to ego, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, when you run into an ex-girlfriend at Walmart or Target, are you really like throwing the best lines out there? I mean, I think we all just kind of have that little bit of ego in us, and I think that's probably what it is for him.
Yeah, I just say, nice pajamas. Nice seeing you. All right. Danny, your thoughts, man? Was there one of those quotes that jumped out at you? Take two if you want, man. Let's have some fun.
Sure, I'll take two. Just real quick on the whole Dana thing. Like, Francis Ngannou's performance was nothing but stellar. I mean, it was shocking. It was impressive. There's no way to shit on that performance. There's absolutely no way to do it. So I'm not surprised that Dana White had those type of comments, because if he would have had anything negative to say about Francis Ngannou knocking down and battering and bruising up the best heavyweight today in boxing, having no professional fights in boxing under his belt, I mean, at that point, you're delusional if you're talking smack about a guy that just did that. So I think this is the best or like the most realistic shade that you could possibly give it. Like, oh, he won the distance. Unbelievable. I didn't watch the fight. But besides that, like another comment that really catch my attention was the Don Davis one, because Don Davis is a promoter of the PFL. And in a way, he was kind of shitting on his own roster and his own product, saying that, look, we're realists. There's no, and I appreciate the honesty, but promoters are not supposed to be honest, right? Like part of their job is to kind of lie to you and entice you into buying the product. And he was just out there saying like, hey, look, there are no interesting fights for Francis Ngannou in the PFL. The only names that are interesting are in the UFC or boxing, or we can get a boxing guy into like a mixed rules fighter or whatever the case may be. But we got nothing. That surprised me because again, promoters' job is to lie, to tell you that their product is great, to come buy it, et cetera, et cetera. So if the boxing fight, which they don't make any money and doesn't promote the PFL really, so we can cancel that. But if the mixed rules fight doesn't happen, like what do you have left? What are you going to offer Francis Ngannou for his fight under the PFL? So very interesting comments by Don Davis. I respect him for being honest, but very surprised at him coming out and saying that PFL's got nothing for Ngannou.
You're right. He could have left himself some sort of an opening, maybe for the winner of Fajeda and Goldsoft. I mean, that's the guy you're crowning as champ and giving $1 million to. I see your point, Danny. Good stuff. How about you, Dan?
You could have hyped up that final, saying the winner there maybe could have be fighting Ngannou. Now everybody's seeing who's going to be Ngannou's potential next opponent. I don't know.
Yeah, and good point on Dana. Should have included that knockdown. That was tantamount. I mean, that was really, really huge. So going the distance it is crazy, but knocking down Tyson Fury is pretty special for a guy making his boxing debut. Dan, Tom, how about you, man?
I thought that was a great answer by Danny, by the way, with the Don Davis one. And I agree, you know, this analogy is going to fall short on our audience, but it's like Bush, Clinton, Perot. Just be Ross Perot. You know, it's not the early 90s, but ironically, you're not going to have to spend what Ross Perot is for the advertising. You're getting free advertisement. Advertise your product, right? And Ross Perot didn't have Ngannou. You actually have him technically. Like, use that. Like, that was a great point by Danny. But I'm going to actually take the Jones quote for a similar reason and format that kind of broke down the Dana quote, because I think they break down similarly where, you know, I think everybody's been on the wrong side of history enough with the Ngannou criticism that even the Dana Whites of the world, who kind of have that FU and F off money, so to speak, like even with that, he's trying to, you know, be playing nice. He leaves out the knockdown. He leaves out that, oh, I didn't see the fight or whatever, right? And then at the end, there's that kind of door leaving open. And you could break down John Jones's quote in a similar way where, you know, he's playing nice, and whether he'll admit it or whether his fans will admit it, because if you can argue about Jones being pound for pound, there is one pound for pound argument that is unarguable with John Jones, and that is his fans are amongst the worst pound for pound fans. They're right up there with the, and I love Khabib and Islam, but they're right up there with you guys. I'm sorry, folks. It's just the truth. They're going to come at me. It's fine. But that's the fact. Like, John Jones has been on the wrong side of these things, and I don't think he doesn't want to be on the wrong side anymore. And speaking on the wrong side, I don't think he wants to be on the other side of Francis Ngannou. He had the chance before. I don't need to break down that timeline going by John Jones' own quotes, folks. This is not me or some media spinning some narrative here. And I don't think he wants that again, because what does he say? Oh, it leaves the door open for everyone. And we know Jones, he doesn't really even want to fight the Sergey Pavloviches or the Tom Aspinalls of the world. He kind of wants those money fights. It's been established that way. The UFC is not so secretly saying it that way by keeping Stipe like, you know, Demolition Man in a cryogenic freezer. Apologies for the early 90 references today, folks. But yeah, that just told me that, you know, John Jones not only confirms that he probably doesn't still not want anything to do with Francis Ngannou in MMA or boxing, but maybe John Jones is twiddling his mustache now, and we could maybe see even less of a comeback in MMA later down the career, because now he is looking at those money fights. I don't think he'll do well. I don't think he'll do as good as Ngannou, but will he show up for a payday? I would see that more than, you know, him fighting Aspinall or Pavlovich.
Love it. All right. Good stuff, guys. And folks, we have a chat room where you can access us through YouTube or Facebook, and I'll be reading the comments. Obviously, the more quality the comment or question, the more likely I am to include it. And that doesn't mean that you can't, you know, challenge us or whatever. That's okay, man. We got thick skin here, but just make it a solid point so we can at least have a discussion, allow us to retort. And the one thing I do ask, though, is hit that like button. Man, this YouTube thing is crazy. I heard there's some sort of an algorithm that is based off that, and hit subscribe. And trust me, I'm leading you towards quality content. So if anything, we're hooking you up. How's that sound? No, but seriously, hit the like button. All right, let's move on to number 2. Here's a couple of fights that have recently been pitched by former UFC champions who now work as color commentators, Daniel Cormier and Michael Bisping. Bisping is all over Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway for the BMF title. Cormier, he's down with Robert Whittaker versus Kamaru Usman. Which fight would you rather see, panel? Danny, you go.
Man, this was a tough one. Obviously, both fights are amazing. I would say that I'm slightly more interested in seeing Whittaker versus Usman. There's something about that fight that just makes sense to me, that just sounds good. Also, a fight that I never really contemplated before. So I like the surprise. I like that all of a sudden this is a possibility and it's something amazing that I never really even thought of before. Now, what am I most interested in seeing as far as move up a weight class? I think I'm more interested in seeing Max Holloway move up to 155 than I am Kamaru Usman at 185. Granted, again, I'm excited for both, and I hope that both do happen. That'd be amazing. But Kamaru Usman at this point in time, I think he's still an elite fighter. He showed that against Khamzat Chimaev, but he is 36 years of age. He's had a lot of mileage on his body as well. So I think at most he's got 2 or 3 high-level fights left, whereas Max Holloway going up to 155, I think it can be an entire chapter of his career. Let's not forget, Max Holloway is just 31 years old. Yes, he's got a ton of mileage on him, but let's not forget he's Hawaiian. So, you know, that he's kind of like the Toyotas of cars. So I would love to see him at 155. I think he can have really fun, interesting fights there, more than just the Gaethje one. And he can have a whole career chapter. And who knows, maybe even challenge for a belt if things go his way. So I'm really excited, and I hope that it happens, that we get Max Holloway at 155, because at 145, I think his days as a top contender are over, just because Volkanovski is there and has, you know, that 0-3 over him. So, or at 3-0 over him. So I'm all for Max Holloway at 155.
Yeah, and you know, 2 guys that he mixed it up with, Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier, they moved up to 155, filled in, you know, their bodies, and have had great careers 10 pounds higher. So good point. All right, Dan, how about you, man? Which one do you like?
Again, great points by my guy Danny. Not just, you know, as a Hawaiian who loves Toyotas, double points to Danny over there. But I will say, even though it is the sexier matchup, I got to go with Usman and Whittaker. With Holloway Gaethje, I expect that to be the answer. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. I just feel like even with that great analogy, you know, with the Hawaiians and how they have that run time, even BJ Penn, he had the record of not being knocked down. Once those guys do start getting hurt, the guys with the chins, it's almost like a worse fall off, though. You know what I'm saying? It's prolonged, but it's almost arguably worse. And I feel like Max, that could be the matchup, a bad matchup. Gaethje could be the guy to do it to him. And when you think about Max being originally scheduled to face Tony Ferguson at a short notice fill-in, remember that, folks? Post UFC 200, we're going to give him Khabib on short notice then. Oh, why don't we just give him a prime Dustin Poirier? Oh, now we're going to give him a prime Justin Gaethje, who's operating the best ever. Like, I want to see Max up at 155 too, but let's give him a more winnable fight first, folks. Let's Calmate. I love the matchup though. It's a sexy matchup, but Whittaker and Usman is something that I've been wanting to see for a minute. When Usman was champ and was getting the pound for pound accolades, and Whittaker was deservedly getting some pound for pound accolades. And now it still makes sense because they're both in kind of, you know, no man's land, you know, 2 losses to the sitting champ, although that's not the case right now with Strickland at middleweight. But you guys know what I mean. Whittaker's kind of been that gatekeeper for a while. Give him something fun. Give him something sexy. It's still a perfect match for both guys.
Good stuff, man. All right. How about you, Goes? What are your thoughts here? You lean towards one more than the other?
Look, even though he's my mustache brother for this episode, I'm going to have to disagree. I get where they're coming from with Gaethje and Holloway, but my problem is something that Dan kind of brought up. I can't get that memory of Holloway at 155 out of my head. Despite being the taller fighter, he just didn't really have, like, he didn't fill in. He didn't have the mass. And that's something that he uses so well to his advantage at 145, right? Max Holloway's the type of guy that he's going to take a couple punches to give one of his own. And you can't mess around like that at 155, especially with a guy like Justin Gaethje. He will churn your lights off. And there's 3 or 4 other guys that are waiting in the wings that are willing to do the same thing. So if Max Holloway does do this, I think, you know, like Danny said, just make it a full-time commitment and really fill into your body, and maybe have to change your fighting style a little bit. Because I don't know that he can cut that over at 155. So for me, the fight that I'm looking forward to more is Usman and Whitaker. I think it just kind of makes sense and it answers a lot of questions, right? Like, is Kamaru Usman really going to gel into this middleweight division? Is he going to be a player? You know, does he have one more run in him? And then when you flip it over to Robert Whitaker, is he going to be able to bounce back, right, from the loss to DDP? What was that all about? Because he did get dominated in that fight, and a lot of people didn't have it going that way. So I think the fight itself would be fun to break down. I could totally get behind something like this. They're both fun, but I just feel like this middleweight matchup makes more sense.
Yep. But greedy me, I'll just say I'm not a panelist. I can steer off the rules. Give them both to us. Those are some great fights. I'd love to see them both on the same card too. That's how greedy I am. All right, let's catch up on some comments from these first two topics. Billy247, great seeing you in here. He says the intro still cracks me up. That gives me a chance to give some love to our brother Abby, who put that thing together. It does crack me up too. I love it. Sky V's and El Daddy, he's back. Great to see him. Mark Fellows says, what a panel. Pump for UFC 295. Urkog versus Costa. Seems like Gozy has 3 additions to his window today. Is he talking about the gloves, Gozy? Did you add a glove? I know one's the stash. What else is?
We got a Strikeforce glove and a Pride glove. I got it as a birthday gift from my man Chris in Seattle. So thank you so much for that.
That is awesome.
Yeah,
Very
it's
cool.
hard to find, man.
Best
John
background, my
Raines.
vote.
Thank you.
John Rain says, hell yeah, always a treat to see Dan Tom on here. Joseph Boza says, I would love to say PFL founder Don Davis's I think he's meant to say Don Davis's reaction caught me by surprise. I think I might be butchering it. He is basically saying Francis should stick to MMA because he would destroy the PFL heavyweight division. Yeah, that's kind of what we were thinking. Hit the like and subscribe button. That was me in there, by the way. I'm gonna try and do both at the same time, and I might repeat it a couple times, so just bear with me. But it's really important to us, so please, if you don't mind, hit that. Frozen, like Elsa says, if Ngannou stood in the UFC, he would have finished Jones in hindsight and smoked everyone and made $8 million. Is that true, guys? I know that some other media members have kind of been boxing about the numbers and things like that. So I don't mind bringing that one back if anyone wants to chime in. But do you guys think he could have maybe done all that during the time that he waited for the Fury fight?
I have no problems with his decision. I think he made out like a bandit. I think his popularity is huge right now. They're talking about him in 2 sports. I think Frozen, like Elsa's, got to let it go.
I like it.
I agree
All
with
right.
Ghost. Yeah.
Cool. All right, guys. I'll try and catch up a little bit, but keep the comments coming. And let's get to topic number 3. The UFC looks to be making a move towards crowning a new champion. Multiple sources recently verified a proposed matchup between Raquel Pennington and Mayra Bueno Silva, which would take place on January 20th, 2025 in Toronto. This would be for the vacant women's bantamweight title, which was recently left vacant by the retirement of former champion Amanda Nunes. Number 8, by the way, on our 30 greatest fighters countdown. If you've been tracking, you should be. You'll love it. All right, guys, do you love that booking or do you hate it? Love it or hate it? Dan.
I'm going to go with love it just because Raquel Pennington is an underrated fighter, okay? So I got soft spot for Rocky, but I'm also a big Shitara fan. Mayra Bueno Silva, she's done really well at the betting window for anybody betting her at plus money. And I really hate, I know we're going to be done with USADA, but I'm not a fan. I've never been a fan from the start of this kind of thing. And I feel like we've only caught people using medications like for ADD or marijuana or things that are not steroids. I feel like we've gotten more of that than anything here. So I love that she's not being punished. And more so, I guess I will say that anybody not loving this fight, I don't blame them. I'm not going to be like, this is the best fight ever. I will say, though, that it does make sense. And whether it makes sense or whether we like it or not, we should not be surprised, folks, because it's not what we like as media. It's not even what you guys like as fans. It used to be. Remember the Dana White vlog days? And those were the days, right? I mean, that was the Dana White of the people. Not anymore, folks. They don't care about what the fans want. It is what the UFC schedule. It's not the fighters. It's not the fans. It is the brand. This is something that I've been getting toasted. Luke Thomas been saying forever. Other media members. It's nothing new to us, folks. It's been coming. It's the schedule. That's why we it's a love-hate. And the hate of it is we get matchups like, you might not like, maybe not the most sexiest matchups. So, don't hate the fighters, hate the people that are making the game.
Okay. Goes? How about you, man? Love it or hate it?
Well, I think like week after week, aren't we always saying we need to do what's right? And I think in this situation, they didn't really have much of a choice. This is kind of what makes the most sense. It doesn't really pop, but they didn't have very many choices here. Lover or hater, Juliana Pena, man, she can sell a fight. Whether it's with her mouth on the mic, and then when she shows up in the cage, she does a pretty good job there too as well. So when you take her out of the equation, yeah, I mean, you're hurting a little bit. Raquel Pennington, I know she's kind of on the quiet side, the respectful side. There's nothing wrong with that. Mayra Bueno Silva, her English is actually getting better, and she's very charming when you hear her in interviews, but maybe that hasn't translated just yet. So I understand why people maybe feel like this felt a little flat, but it makes sense. It's what you got to go with, I think, in the situation. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a fun fight. I think Raquel Pennington, when she's at her best, she's tough. And Mayra Bueno Silva, I don't think we've seen the best of her yet. I think she's still going to continue to improve. It's just that feeling, that I think part of it as well is kind of like Amanda Nunes and her not being around, them having to kind of be in her shadow. I can understand how difficult of a situation is and why people feel this way, but I think it was the right move, and we can't complain about these things one week and then say something else the next week. I think this is the right move.
Okay. How about you, Danny? What are your thoughts on this? Love it or hate it? I know I do want to throw it out there. I think it's probably something people are reacting to. What about Juliana Pena? Apparently there was an injury. Kaylin Vera is coming off a win. Irene Aldana, who I know you're very close with that camp, she's coming off the recent loss to Amanda Nunes. So yeah, I guess maybe we didn't have so many names, but that doesn't mean you still have to love it. So love it or hate it.
Well, I'm somebody that generally just makes a lot of his decisions or comments and has certain outlooks on the sport based on sporting wise. Every now and then I'll go into the entertainment and maybe or just for action, but usually I like to sort of build my takes based on sporting fairness. And in this case, I think this is the fight that you got to make in the division, keeping in mind that Juliana Pena, as you mentioned, is unavailable, or that's what she says, right? So I think this fight does make sense. However, I just wanted to point out that, yeah, I have no problems with this fight at all. But if I got to be honest, am I excited for it? Is this a fight that I want to see? Is this a fight that I've been thinking of? No, not really. And I think that's just kind of like the state of the women's bantamweight division. This is nothing specific to Raquel or Mayra Bueno Silva, who are very good fighters. Both are, but just really the rest of the division. I think if you put in other names there, I think maybe Juliana Pena would spice things up a little bit. But outside of her, like most fights would kind of just be a bit bland. And I'm just kind of scratching my head here and thinking, like, where did this go wrong for the UFC matchmakers? Because how are you going to have a division that at some point had, a Holly Holm that was a superstar, Misha Tate, Ronda Rousey, Amanda Nunes, and you weren't really able to transfer over some of that star power to the other ladies. You weren't able to navigate the matchmaking in a way that this fight may be under different circumstances or sort of a alternate reality. It would be exciting. It would feel big. It would feel, I don't know, important. But I don't know, just kind of the state of the women's bantamweight division. I'm not feeling it. Women's flyweight, strawweight, great. But bantamweight, I don't know what's happened that everything just seems kind of bland at this point.
That is kind of odd, Danny, when you think about it, because George mentioned it in the intro, like our 30 greatest fighters, there's 2 bantamweights on there already, like this, they have had an identity for a long time. People have tuned in, but just lately it's starting to feel a little flat. And I feel like they have talent. It's just maybe they're just not promoting them the way they have for others.
Right. Yeah. Like I've seen, for example, like UFC's been pushing Alexa. We saw what they did with Noche UFC, and like we've seen Zhang Weili, how much they push her at 115. Right. At bantamweight, like we see how, like, for example, Sean O'Malley, we knew they were getting behind him, right? And certain fighters like Hamza Chimaev, right? A perfect example. I haven't really felt, and maybe you guys can correct me, I haven't really felt the same at women's bantamweight. Has the UFC pinpointed a fighter that they want to push? Has it felt like they've made an effort to kind of prop
Holly
that
Holm.
division up? I haven't felt it, to be honest.
Holly Holm. That's about it. It's the same fighters for the last 10 years in bantamweights and the rankings and in the recycling process. So that is one good reason for at least the Mayra Bueno Silva side, right? But I don't want to say in defense of the UFC, but in defense, it's been a really weak division though too. So it's been really tough. So maybe that's why we are getting the as I jokingly say, Holly Holm, and not so jokingly, that is the right answer, kind of, right?
Yeah. George, you might want to murder me for doing this, but I want to jump in because I've been waiting for Dan to be on Spinning Back Click to ask him this question. Danny, you brought up Noche, UFC. And one of the things that Dana White had talked about was doing that at the Sphere. And I want to say Dan is probably the only one of the four of us has actually been in the Sphere. To me, MMA there seems like a bad idea. It seems like it's super distracting. The way you would be looking down, like I don't even think anybody would really look at the cage. They'd probably be looking at the screens. I wouldn't mind watching a pay-per-view there and watching the screens and just sitting back and doing that. But live fights, Dan, will that work in the Sphere?
No, Sphere's more of a show, and it's tough. I've laid on my review for this, but like people got really mad, and I said like I would love for the UFC to go. I hope they do well. Like we're media, we get to cover this. Like, would you guys not want to go there for a show? Like it's an amazing experience, but it's for a show. And when I recently went back to watch Pride 33, one of the best cards of all time, that I believe at least two of the panel members may have been at, George and Goes, right? I know Goes was for sure. And that was, I forgot, they started it like a show, right? Like Japanese MMA, like they had like a whole like movie production to show you that gets you into it. And that's before the dun, 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 the drum walk. I'm not even talking about that, right? UFC has none of that. UFC has famously walked that back even before this ESPN branding era, right? So it doesn't really get me too excited as far as what they can do with that. And when you come to the actual action, what Ghost said is correct, because when you look at it, there's very little room for an actual stage. Like they'll make it happen here at the Virgin or smaller venues where you maybe only have kind of a 3 kind of wall. You're not performing in the round, and they will sneak. Don't get me wrong. Those WSOF, we recently had Marab versus Davalishvili versus Peter Yan there, right? For a UFC fight night this last year. And they'll sneak like a row back there or whatever, but this isn't the same. You're not sneaking rows to the side or the back of it. And in fact, not only is it a small, steep down look, because you're not meant to really look down there, so to speak, but there are also massive air blowers that limit the seating and stage. Now, maybe you can get a U2 or a band to play on there, but I mean, we're still in Las Vegas's home. As much as we joke about the athletic commission, there are rules. You do need like ambulance accesses, walkways. Like there's all these logistics that do not apply with what it was designed for. And it was not designed for sports. And I know sports fans are sports fans. So unless you're saying, I like sports, I like what you like, Buffalo Wild Wings, Super Bowl. Like if I'm not saying that, I'm going to get tortured. So people like hate when I say this, but I'm like, it's not against it. Like I want the UFC to go there. I would love MMA to incorporate visual stuff. I love all that trippy stuff. Believe me, folks. I'm just saying it's two different things, though. It's two different things.
Is it a 360 thing? Like when you went, is it like
yes,
the whole wall is like it's a dome basically?
Yeah. So basically, you would like to even utilize that, you would need that kind of like Mark Zuckerberg metaverse like technology, right? And we kind of saw that. That's not really where it needs to be, especially just that's just for like a basic like Oculus kind of like user experience, right? Much less for the I don't know, what was it, like 18K or whatever, that most things cameras can't even record. Yeah, it was 18K. We were some of the first to see 18K images for the at least I don't know about for the U2, but for the Darren Aronofsky, they're actually like unloading 8K images. And even for that, this was a filmmaker. This was pre-produced. This isn't live, right? Like this guy's an award-winning filmmaker, okay? And it wasn't that long of a film. It was actually pretty short. It was like only like 50 minutes long or 54 minutes long. There were plenty of slots that they don't even look consistent. Like it doesn't. I'm saying that in a bad critical way. Like they're still figuring this thing out on the fly. Like Aronofsky used this analogy. He goes, "This is like building a plane while you're flying it." So the fact that what it's built for, the professionals who actually have experience in this are having difficulty even having a consistent product. I know Dana White's Dana White, and he does have the promoter speak down. You can't take that away from the man. But like, I definitely think he's out of his depths on what he's promising.
I guess what I'm thinking is like, and I haven't been, and I haven't, to be honest, looked too much into it, so I don't know how it works. But I'm assuming is like if you're watching a show, like they have a surrounding, is almost like as if you're in, right? But if it's a sporting event, like what would you play? Like how would it work? Are you in the octagon and you're looking around, or what the hell? Like I don't understand. Right? Like,
are they gonna have to like suit up Keith Peterson in some kind of like VR thing, and he's gonna be out there like
maybe
having to bear the brunt of it for us, like.
That's funny. Guys, I did want to throw this out there. And if you have a piece of paper near you and you crumble it and throw it at me, I'll take it. Or maybe you'll give me a fist bump. But I had a wild card when it took this long. Because remember, she retired in June, if I'm not mistaken. We've sat here forever and we don't even get the vacant title till January. That's kind of a long time for someone that proclaimed, I'm done, and it seemed like she was telling the truth. My wild card, guys, was GDR, Jermaine Durandamy. She had a baby, but she had said that later this year, I think I heard that through her team, she was going to come back and fight again. If you've ever taken a look at her record, dudes, she's got some skins on her wall. She's a former featherweight champ. And I don't know. I just thought maybe they could possibly bring her back because she kind of is exciting in the sense that she's a great striker. She'll get some finishes. Not really too much of a smack talker, but speaks English. Doubles as I think a cop in the Netherlands. So I thought maybe there was some marketability. She just ran into a freight train with Nunes, right? But she's beaten some really, really quality fighters. I don't know. I was hoping maybe she could be one of the two participants, especially when Mayra Bueno-Silva was having her problems with USADA, which apparently have been cleared up. Pena, I didn't even know she was having an injury, but or she had an injury, but I don't know. What would you guys have thought of that? Has it been too long? Because I think we're going on 3 years since we've seen her.
I think too long. Yeah. I think this is the fight, really. Like, if we look at it sporting wise, and it's number 2 versus number 3, and keeping in mind that number 1, Juliana Peña's injured, like, this makes sense. Like, credit to the UFC, who sometimes choose entertainment over sporting merit. And I get it, they're a business, but in this scenario, they could have put in Holly Holm, and then, at the end of the day, I think it was a no contest, the fight against Mayra Bueno-Silva. And Holly Holm is obviously a known name, somebody that would carry much weight into the fight, at least promotionally. But they went with Pennington and Silva, which I think it's the right choice here. So credit to the UFC for that. But just as I'm happy that this is the right fight to make, I also can't say that I'm super stoked for it, and I'm vastly excited for this matchup.
And the other thing I wanted to say, the UFC really just needs to concentrate on their women's MMA. If you look at the champ, Zhang Weili, she's been beaten twice by Rose, yet Rose is kind of frozen out. We've always talked about how when someone loses twice to the champ, they're frozen out. But yet somehow Rose went to 125. It didn't go successful. Then you look at 125, and thanks, Michael Bell. I mean, we didn't solve that. We got to run them two back again. I've enjoyed their fights, no problem with it. But here's why I say that, because I thought that if Valentina won, okay, obviously the trilogy, but if she didn't, I thought she could maybe compete at 135 when the only person that really stopped her was Nunes, and she has a win over Pena as well. Plus, Blanchfield and Manon Fiorot, they're, seems like they're big for 125 a little bit, or maybe they could also go up to 135. So maybe we have some hope there. But, we're talking about this matchup at 135. We're just not too excited. And then 145 is a catastrophe. But, geez, I don't know. I think the UFC should really focus on women's MMA. I don't know if they just have to send scouts out there all over the world and find a way to build these ladies up. But, yeah, those divisions, they just were popping a few years ago, way more. And right now, I just don't see too much excitement levels from fans or media when announcements are made. But anyway, those are my thoughts. Let's go to topic 4. This past Saturday night, Jailton Almeida defeated Derek Lewis in the main event at UFC Sao Paulo. Almeida dominated Lewis on the ground, scoring a unanimous win over the Black Beast. Almeida had been surging through the heavyweight ranks on a similar path as Sergey Pavlovich and Tom Aspinall. However, this fight was not regarded by most in the MMA space as a statement win. Did this enhance Almeida's stock as a title challenger? Guys, are you buying or selling? Goes? Goes, you're muted?
Sorry about that. No, I'm saying, look, I think I'm buying. It's not a performance where I think you say he's a guy that's going to win a title and he's going to hold on to it, but it's definitely a performance where you say this is a guy that deserves to be up towards the top, right? Derek Lewis, no matter where you have him in his career, he's still always a dangerous guy, and this is a guy that dominated him. Now, I'm going to say dominated, and I'm still going to sort of criticize him because I think when he goes back and he watches this fight, I think Almeida's going to see there's definitely room for improvement, right? There positions where I think maybe he lacked a little bit of aggression, where maybe a couple elbows here and there could have forced Derek into another position where he could have capitalized on it, and he didn't do that. And so even though he dominated that fight, I still feel like there's some tweaks that need to be made for him to be a little bit more towards like the guys that we're going to talk about soon, and Pavlovich and Aspinall. I feel like he's like maybe one notch below them right now, but it seems like a kid that's hungry and wants to get better. He says good things on the mic, so I think the sky's the limit for this guy. I don't think he really needs to rush anything because of how heavy it is at the top right now. That whole scenario needs to play out, and he's going to have time to get better. So I think he should just take his time and work on that.
And you stated earlier you enjoyed the fight.
It was okay. Yeah, it wasn't bad. But that's mostly because Derek Lewis at any time, I mean, he's proven to us he could end the fight. So that was part of it, you know?
Each round starts on the feet, and then Derek did get up a few times, and that's when I was on the edge of my seat. But yeah, a lot of people were not digging it too much. How about you, Danny? You buying the Almeida stock or you selling it?
I'm buying it in terms of his potential of what he can do and how far he can go in the division. I mean, if you just look at his shots, you will see very, very little heavyweights get down all the way to their knees to actually wrestle. It's mostly all, ties and whatnot. He's clearly a light heavyweight build fighting at heavyweight, which is completely brilliant because he's bringing in some of the things that make light heavyweight successful at heavyweight that are rare to find, and using that to his advantage. And I'm sure he's going to contend for a title, like fight for a title at some point. Will he'll be champion? I'm still a little hesitant to go that far and say that he will, but certainly he'll fight for a belt. I think his potential is quite big. However, I think he should just look at the blueprint of, or at least the career of the guy that he was supposed to fight that night. Curtis Blades. Curtis Blades is a phenomenal fighter, but not a very exciting fighter. I know he's had some finishes here and there, but I think his style hasn't been too appealing with fans, and I think that's cost him. We talked about, or at least I've mentioned a little before, how the UFC sometimes looks over sporting and looks at entertainment and money in order to make certain fights happen. Man, you got to be a draw. You got to be a draw. You got to be exciting. And I'm not saying like, game plan out the window and go trade shots with Derek Lewis. That is a terrible idea. No, you just had to do the same thing that you were doing, but just be more aggressive, implement some ground and pound. I think you can wrestle and have a heavy wrestling attack and still be exciting. Look at Islam, look at Khabib, right? I think Jalton was in many positions where he could have landed ground and pound where the position was secured and he chose not to. It kind of gave me vibes of like Damian Maia when he would outright say like, I do not want to hurt my opponents and I'm just going to grapple and that's it, and kind of have this like old school mentality of just using jiu-jitsu to prove it's like the best or most optimal martial art. Man, you got to do some damage. This is the heavyweight division. And I don't think it's a huge fix. I mean, he was in the positions to do damage. He just, I don't know why, kind of felt like he chose not to. So I'm high on his potential as far as a contender, but if he doesn't get some sort of killer instinct, maybe he won't get favorable calls from the UFC, because they do value entertainment. So we'll see. But I would say his stock took a little bit of a hit with this performance.
Yeah, you're right. The killer instinct was missing a little bit. Dan, I got your broker on the line right now. He wants to know, man, Almeida stocks, are you buying or selling?
I can't sell the stock of like literally one of 2 or 3 heavyweights that actually can wrestle in this division. And that was a great shout, Curtis Blades from Danny. Although I will say Curtis is like barely earning himself on that list anymore. Maybe to Danny's point, because of that treatment, that is very true. Curtis has almost felt like the need to strike more, and he's frustratingly not wrestled as one of the only wrestlers in the division. So I welcome a guy like Jailton Almeida, but for a guy who is affectionately referred to on the internet as the jail man, because he's essentially Nasty Nate from Half Baked, gonna take your cornbread in the shower, in the lunchroom, doesn't matter where it's gonna happen, folks. You figured a guy named the jail man would be a little better at going to Pound Town, if you know what I mean, right? And of course, I'm talking about striking while on the ground. Get your guy's head out of the gutter. I'm talking about what Danny was talking about, striking on the ground. And like Danny said, it almost looked like he chose not to. And I'm a big fan of the jail man. He follows me on Twitter. Okay. Like, I don't like it when heavyweights follow me in any way, much less on Twitter. I don't need this man knocking at any of my doors. I don't need Malhadinho coming this way. You know what I'm saying? But I will say, in the spirit of James Krause, and speaking of cornbread, like I am curious if they want to trace maybe where the bread went as far as who bet that decision prop, because there were certain points where it's like, come on, man, like I think in round 3 he hits him with a good hammer fist, and like Lewis turns over and he's like, "Ooh, I don't want to do that too much. I don't want to do that too much." And I'm speaking this, of course, half jokingly, as well as an admitted gambler who will bet on like round props or something. And it reminded me, I was off last week, by the way, but and I didn't watch this live, but when I went back to watch it, it reminded me of somebody like playing for the later rounds for bigger odds. Like, no, I don't want it to end too early. I want it to go. And you look at the prices, like you were priced out on betting anything, but like getting like crazy odds on a decision. Not trying to throw that in the universe, even though I technically just did. I will say this and ended on this though. If this fight did take place in prison, I think even the prison guards would be like, at a certain point, like, guys, if you guys aren't exchanging cornbread or bodily fluids, what are we doing here? Can we just get up? Can we just get up? Because there was no strikes being thrown. You know, it was crazy. So yeah, come on, jail man, give us better than that, buddy. I know you got it.
Yeah, and Mark Goddard was only vocal towards the end. I thought there was a few moments where he could have stepped in and just started telling them, not look, I know there's a lot of people that say, let it go, let it go, let it go. Others say stand it up, right? Sports entertainment or the actual pureness of mixed martial arts. But still, I do like it when they step in, and even though they don't stand them up, there's these warnings, right? He tells them either that or maybe my sound was getting drowned out, but I just felt like there could have been a little bit more of that earlier. It was compelling when the round would end and we knew they'd come back standing, and then Lewis would squat down and threaten with an uppercut. He never really threw a flying knee that I can remember, and that's how he ended his last fight. So he was kind of messing with his head a little bit. And then, I don't want to bury Jailman because, man, he really dug deep at times. When there's been a lot of grapplers, when it don't go their way, they get served up and knocked out, all of a sudden the tide turns. But, man, he stuck with the wrestling. He won some scrambles. So there was something there. But at the end of the day, this is fight entertainment. And look at where Pavlovich and Aspinall are. And it's because of like what Danny said, that killer instinct. It was just missing. This guy's like 19-2 overall, 6-0 in the UFC. He should be right where those guys are. And right now, he's just not there. He needs to shake things out with a fight or two. And maybe he can join those guys. And as you all know, that year that you cost yourself sometimes can really hurt, because what happens in a year? Jones comes back. Miocic is back in the mix. One of these two is going to win unless Michael Bell's the third judge and we get a draw or something like that. Then who knows if they have to run it back. But yeah, this was Jailman's opportunity and he just didn't go for it. He didn't bet on himself. He didn't roll the dice. Oof, man, I don't know. I just thought it was just a big missed chance. Anyways, all right. So let's go to topic number 5 here, guys. This weekend coming up, the UFC turns 30. Well, technically the day after UFC 295 on Saturday, November 11th. Quick chance for us to plug our watch along. Goes and I will be doing a watch along on Saturday for UFC 295. Watch the fights with us starting at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific for 4 prelim cards. And then the main event starts. It's a pay-per-view, as you know. And whether you order it or not, hang with us. But if you don't order it, we'll be your eyes and ears. 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. Solid card with 2 title fights that we'll talk about now. All right, so in the main event and co-main event, here are the fights to look forward to. Yuri Prochazka versus Alex Ojeda for the vacant UFC light heavyweight title. This is the proper, the undisputed. The winner will get that belt around his waist. Sergey Pavlovich and Tom Aspinall in the co-main event for the interim UFC heavyweight title. Even though Jones is hurt, and even though other champs have been stripped when they've had serious injuries, this one didn't go that way. He's still the champ. He will fight Miocic, may I point out, when he comes back and is healthy. So one of these two guys may even have a chance to defend the interim belt. I don't know. My head's going to explode if I really get into it. But the question here, guys, is which fight is most intriguing for you? Danny, we go back to you, South Beach.
Man, it's got to be Yuri Prochazka versus Poatan Alex Pereira. That fight is just amazing. That fight is something that would go down in Valhalla. Like the first thing you do when you enter Valhalla is watch these two just go at it. Like this is it. These are two warriors that love to scrap, big power, take big chances, all gas, no breaks, very questionable defense, certainly not questionable offense. I love this fight. This fight's amazing. Plus, it's for the undisputed, and these guys have been training for each other to fight each other in a full camp. I love the Tom Aspinall versus Sergey Pavlovich fight. Amazing fight. I really do enjoy that matchup, but it does come under unfortunate circumstances given John Jones' injury. Pavlovich was as a backup, but like I wonder how hard he was training. Plus, he was training either for John Jones or Stipe Miocic. Now he's getting Aspinall, and Aspinall, he was supposed to commentate this fight for the British broadcast partner is, I think TNT or whatever the case, whatever it is. So it's a fun fight. It's a great fight for sure, but I just wish both these guys had full camps specifically for each other. But man, nothing can top that Yuri Prochaska versus Alex Pereira fight. Sign me up. I'm all in on that one. Yeah, that I'll just say it. That's the shit. That's the fight. That's a fight to watch in this card.
All right. How about you, Dan? Do you feel the same way?
It's an amazing fight. It definitely is. It's going to be chaos versus Chalma for Poatan Pereira and Prochaska. That would probably take my favorite, obviously, because I'm a big Poatan fan as well. And obviously, how can you not be a Yuri Prochaska fan? I've been watching that guy since, putting on crazy fights in Risen. I will say this, though. I think the heavyweight fight is a genuine contender for this question, but the one thing that kind of knocks it out, at least for me, not saying it has to for others, because again, the heavyweight fight is actually a really good one not to sleep on. It's just the fact that one of the parties is taking this on short notice, and I screamed it to the top of my lungs with the Volkanovski and Makhachev fight, even with the Usman fight, despite Usman overperforming arguably against Chimaev. It is the elephant in the room, folks. It doesn't matter how good you are. You can't be fighting, on a shorter notice like that. So we'll see how that affects Aspinall, but that anytime that happens, no matter how good the matchup, no matter how good the fighter, for me, that knocks it down. So I'll take Prochaska Pereira.
Is it unanimous, or do you offer a defense for the heavyweights?
Man, this is a nightmare because both fights on paper are just so awesome. I'd be shocked if either one of them went the distance, but it's kind of odd because both scenarios, when you think about it, even though titles are going to be wrapped around waists at the end of the night, you just have this weird feeling that you still wouldn't know that the best fighter in that division is standing there with a belt around their waist, right? It's almost like the old Star Wars movies where you'd see the Force ghosts. You're going to see one of Jamal Hill standing in the background. You're going to see one of John Jones, right? It's just kind of an odd scenario. I get where these guys are coming from, and they kind of sold me a little bit. But I went into this a little bit thinking more on the heavyweight side, just because that division is kind of popping, and you have these two young bucks. I don't like the fact that Aspinall didn't really fully prepare for this. That does bother me a little bit. But I think the way the fight can play out will be a lot of fun. I feel like it's going to be more chess, and the other one was just going to be maybe not checkers, but I mean, they're going to really go at each other. So I think the other two guys actually kind of swayed me a little bit, but my original pick was the heavyweights. And how can you go wrong, man? Two hungry lions. They're trying to establish their position here in the heavyweight division. But you know what? I'll admit it. You two guys won me over.
How about that? And he's telling the truth. He really was leaning towards the heavyweights, which I still am, only because there is some beautiful footwork that Tom Aspinall has as a big dude. I can only skip rope for 30 seconds and my calves give out. But this dude just has the ability to bounce. Look at him right there. Look at that B-roll by Cold Coffee. And then, of course, Pavlovich, man, with those heavy hands. He loves the crack. That's really, really hard to top. Now, that said, the light heavyweights, those guys are some gangsters too. Pereira, what a story, guys. This guy, was doing the whole middleweight thing just a year ago, was successful, won that title. Then over the weekend, or I think we hear he's going to be in the Glory Hall of Fame. I mean, that's amazing. What a combat sports career. And if he can cap 2023 off with winning the title here, man, that would be pretty special. And then Yuri Prochaska, who can forget that fight? I think it was in Singapore, if I'm not mistaken, that he had. Oh, that elbow that's coming up here against Reyes. That was nasty. But remember him versus Glover Teixeira? Oh, my God.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was one of the craziest fights I've ever seen. And I think that one will probably be in the UFC Hall of Fame's fight wing, So I'm all over it, but I think I'm gonna stick to the heavyweights, and maybe that's because I'm a heavyweight. So I'm partial to the big fellas. All right, listen, we got a special guest coming up. So whenever he's ready to pop in, he'll pop in because we gotta clear some things up here on spinning back click. My man Nolan King and Goes had to grow out some mustaches because back in September, me and Danny had a bet. Either his mustache was gonna go, or the little that I got left on this dome was gonna go. But we got bailed by Michael Bell. We got bailed out by Michael Bell. And luckily, we threw that caveat in there. Well, what if it's a draw? Draws are rare, guys. But there was a draw in a title fight. And so these two, God, I wish we would have pinned them to the Mohawks, but they said they would grow mustaches. And here they are. They've paid their dues, especially Nolan, man, for the last 6 weeks. Goes just started growing that, I think, last night. But here they are to pay off their bets. So congratulations, guys. And Danny, is the guy that's rocking a mustache, do they get your approval?
They get my approval. Shouts out to both for honoring their side of the bet, which I think I really do think they did it jokingly. They didn't imagine this fight going to a draw. They were kind of just like, yeah, whatever. We'll just throw that out there. But it happened. It happened. So I'm glad that I still have the mustache on my face. Yeah, shouts out to these guys for honoring the bet.
Yeah, I was saying to Goes last night, I think you guys could have got a lot more out of us. Like, we got pretty good odds on the mustache. You know what I mean? Like, you were gonna have to shave your head. You were gonna have to shave your stash that you always rock. So I'm okay with it. We were good sports about it. 6 weeks or whatever of doing this, waiting to be on SBC to show it off, and here I am. So it's all fun.
Yeah,
man.
2 weeks ago,
Shout
Nolan
out,
was like,
shout
okay,
out
I'm
Mike
ready to pay
Bell.
this
Shout out
off.
Alexa.
He's like, I'm ready to pay this off. What's happening here? And every time I looked at the schedule, either one guy was on or the other one wasn't, or we just didn't get to it. So I told Goes, I go, hey, enough already. Start growing out that mustache. And he did it. I think it was last Thursday I told him. He didn't have too much, but the kid can really grow a mustache pretty damn quick.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell's going on here, dude. The night of the fight, I don't know if Nolan can co-sign on this, but growing a mustache was the last thing I was thinking about. It was really, is Danny gonna have to cut his, or is George gonna have to shave his head? And I never in a million years would have thought we'd be in this situation after that. But I remember getting Nolan's text. All it said was, bro. And it was the exact feeling I had. I couldn't believe we're in this situation, man. I can't wait for the show to be over so I could shave the stupid thing off.
It's coming off. You got to leave it
Hell
for the
yeah.
watch along.
Bro, if I walk
Hell yeah.
next to a school, I'll probably get shot looking like this, dude. Like, this is not a good look on me, man.
Nolan, you're going to New York. You shaving it or you rocking it?
We'll see. We'll see what happens. It's Movember, so I feel like it's a little more acceptable now. You know, even if you never get a good feel. Like, if I see myself on camera this week, I might be like, oh my God, I got to get rid of that. But well, I'll rock it for a few more days at least. See how that goes.
Goes, if you rock it till next week's SBC, if there's a draw this weekend, I'll shave it all.
No.
Nolan's got more of an ass kicker though. He's got like the early '90s Ben Affleck bad guy in a movie classic. You know, the classic Ben Affleck ass kicker. Whereas Goes is like Peruvian Tom Selleck, just looking handsome. I like it, Goes.
I just
Now
look
Now that
like
you're not
I'm
handsome,
on,
Nolan. You're handsome too, Nolan. I'm just saying.
Selleck.
I like the Selleck over here.
I look like I'm running a pawn store in Guadalajara, Mexico, or something, dude. Like, not even a successful one. Like, I'm making bad deals left and right. It's not a good look, man.
This could kick off your acting career, Goes.
Yeah.
This could be the break you were looking for.
Well, listen, since we got Nolan, let's crack some of these additionals. Nolan, stick around with us here.
Sure.
It'd be great to have you chime in. Some stuff went down this past week. Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, he recently revealed a torn ACL while training. Says he was training for an MMA fight and hopes to still compete next year. He's 39, and let's just say he certainly doesn't need the money. So is it a good idea or a bad idea? Nolan, let's start with you.
No, I think it's a good idea. You know, I think obviously it's going to get a lot of eyeballs on it if he keeps the charity portion intact that was talked about with Elon Musk. I think that's good, and I think it's good for us to have somebody that's got his influence and certainly the money getting involved in the sport. So I don't hate it. I think you know, he's 39. It's kind of older, coming off a knee injury, but for somebody that wants to take an amateur fight, and I don't think has any expectations of doing anything necessarily in terms of professionally, I love it. I think it's great.
Dan Tom, how about you, man?
Yeah, I'm definitely usually the hater on all this stuff because I still don't understand when I'm walking through the grocery store, folks, that we have like magazines still with celebrities like faces on it. Like we're just so consumed by that. That being said, I don't want to be a hypocrite as a 38-year-old who stupidly wants to compete and does not and has even less gain and even less opportunity to generate the charity like a Zuckerberg would have. So I'm definitely not going to hate on the guy. Although I will say I think Elon Musk's interest in fighting him is about as comparable to John Jones's interest in fighting Ngannou, and Musk is too busy destroying the platform where a lot of us counted on. So thank you for that, Elon, you douche. I do hope you get in there just so you get your butt beat. That's about it.
Hang on a second. Dan, would you fight Zuck?
You know, we're comparable. I'm a bit heavy right now, but you know, my aim weight it wouldn't be too far for where he's walking around right now, from what I hear. But yeah, that would be awesome. I don't know. Maybe just, you know, hopefully, you know, hopefully I'm not related to his wife or whatever, so it's not like a family on family affair, and we'll just double check there. I think we're good.
I think Dan Tom wants Elon Musk.
Yeah, I would rather have Musk. I would rather have Musk for sure. Yeah, just because
pride open weight action.
Yeah, but that'd be like punching like a big giant bag of milk, though. I mean, my bag work's not that impressive. I heard his side control's really good, man. I don't know, but
like a dead horse.
No, my turtle game is too strong. I've got the old man turtle game, baby. I'll be going turtle, looking at Eduardo Telesm, or maybe, you know, do some little Damian Maya half guard there. But yeah.
All right. How about you guys? What should Zuck do?
I think what makes it so interesting about Mark Zuckerberg's story is the fact that he doesn't need to do it, you know, not for money, not for clout. He's just doing it for himself because he found something that he was passionate about, and he's following that passion. I can't really hate on that. I mean, that's probably why he's in the position he's in today. So more power to that guy. If that's something he wants to keep pursuing, go for it, man.
Danny, good idea or bad idea?
I mean, when you're that rich, you can do whatever the hell you want. I just find it hilarious, and I'm sure Dan Tom can attest to this. Once that training bug bites you, you make jujitsu or MMA or boxing, whatever it is, your entire personality. And that includes bragging and complaining about your body injuries, because it is a very demanding sport, and you can't escape it. You know, you can't escape the injuries. You know, somebody with a torn meniscus here still. Yeah, I mean, this is just classic training bug that's, you know, happened to make its way to a one of the most influential people in this world, and a billionaire. And you know, yeah, it's just, I just find the whole thing hilarious. How he's like, you know, and the photos were a bit dramatic too. I'm gonna be back and this and that. Yeah, I'm not hating on it. Like, go for it.
I'm all in. I think it's a great idea. I wouldn't have blamed him if he said, I gave it a run, but hey, I got other things I'm keeping me busy. But man, he's got a passion and he's all in on it. And to say this is just a speed bump, watch this, I'm competing next year, I tip my hat to that. So and like you guys said, he doesn't really need to, right? But he's willing to, and I think it's good all the way around, because I think he's doing it the right way. All right, we're gonna sneak in one more. It's such a big card, 30-year anniversary, but we got to go quick. So here it is: UFC 295 prelims. All right, we talked about the big fights, and I know there's some good stuff on the main card. If you want to dip into one of those, it doesn't have to be a prelim, just not main or co-main event. Is there a gem in there you'd like to spotlight? Make it quick, guys. Go first.
I'm going to go the fun route. I actually think Godinez and Ricci will be a fun fight. I think they're both very likable people, and I think the way they fight will make it very interesting, and I think it'll kind of propel the next person into a better position. So I kind of like this fight.
Danny Segura.
I'm going to go with the main card opener, Diego Lopez versus Pat Sabatini. That's Grappler's Delight right there. Ooh. Super excited for that one.
Mm-hmm. Dan Tom.
Ooh, I was gonna go with a lightweight opener there with Matt Favola, Benoit Saint Denis. But the opener of the card, if you're saying prelims, well, why not flyweight division, where sadly is like their home? They just bury them on the prelims still. But I want to shout out Joshua Van and Kevin Borjas, mainly Joshua Van. He was on my prospects to watch article at the beginning of this year at MMA Junkie. That's pinned to my profile at Dan Tom MMA on the artist formerly known as Twitter, and that's aged very well. I had Joshua Van actually on there as someone to watch. And shout out to my guy on the panel, Nolan King, who is a big resource for everybody for prospects and what's coming up in the scene. He knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Nolan, you got one, or you gonna bow out because the guys may have taken
No, that's I mean, Josh Van's awesome. That's a good shout by Dan. I'm gonna go back to the other one he mentioned, which was Matt Frivola and Benoit Saint Denis.
Oof.
I think just if you guys know me, you know I like the I guess every MMA fan likes the inevitable explosion of a fight that you know is just going to probably end in the first round without a lot of defense. So I'm going to go with those guys. I think it's going to win fight of the night.
Great stuff. All right. Again, congrats to Nolan and Goes for growing out some pretty decent mustaches. Nolan, we say it every week. We're proud of you. We really hope you do well in the best journalist category this year. Congrats again on your nomination. All these guys, Danny Segura, Blemos MMA, Dan Tom with Protect Your Neck, Goes and I with Junkie Radio, man. You know, we would love your support there. Just some quick shameless plugs. Cold Coffee, he's got his podcast as well. With John Morgan, former colleague of ours, the MMA Roadshow. Check them out. Great job him and Abby do behind the scenes. Always want to give those guys a shout out. And you guys for tuning in every Monday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. We do this, right? We break it all down. We jump in there. We get some of your comments, put them in part of the show. I wish I could have done a few more today. And one last favor, you know, I know some of you are watching a little bit delayed, but if you haven't heard it yet, here it is again. Hit that like and subscribe. It totally helps us out. And we'll see you all next week for Spinning Back Clique. Take care, everyone. Enjoy the coverage of UFC 295. We'll be rocking and rolling. We have a team out there. And don't forget about the watch along on Saturday. Go out and be a champion. We'll talk soon.